Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Ron's Reviews. I'm Brian Berenshausen here once again with Open Organization Ambassador Ron McFarland. Today, we're going to be talking about trust in the open organization. Ron's going to talk to us about some reading and research he's been doing for a long time on that topic. Ron, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Hello, Brian. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. All ready to go.
So great. Let's talk about trust in the open organization. Obviously, trust is a really important concept, something we talk about a lot in the open organization community, the relationship between trust and open organization principles, right? Does following the principles lead to greater organizational trust? Does greater organizational trust allow you to enact the principles? Is it one, both, neither? What's the relationship between trust and our open organization definition? That's what I'd like to learn from you today. So why don't we get started?
Yeah, basically, I started reading this material because when you think about open organization principles, two really come to the front. If you cannot trust someone that you're talking to, you're not going to collaborate with them very well. You're not going to exchange a lot of information. And so that was one thing that I started thinking. And the next is transparency. People are not as going to be as open as they normally would unless there's some kind of trust that has been developed there. So collaboration and transparency are the two principles that I really thought about the most when we talk about trust. So that's why I started studying it. In this particular article, it's a different setting. It was a fascinating setting than we're normally used to. So this is based on a book called The Code of Trust, and it's by an FBI agent that wrote a book on it and has some concepts. But his situation is a little bit different, and that's one of the things I like to compare the two. But there's a lot we can learn from it.
Yeah, it looks great. And of course, I've read your reviews, which are,
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Here are the reviews that we wrote back. Now, the first one was in July 24th of 2018. And then the follow-up, remember, we broke that up into two parts. The second part was August 7th of 2018. So it's a good 3 years ago. And those are the two articles, right?
Yep.
And here again, this is what I researched now. It's really not my personal data. I could talk about trust in terms of a sales environment, but not here again, an FBI agent with the foreign agent, and they're trying to build some kind of trusting relationship so they can at least, let's say, share certain information, in some ways help each other out.
This
It's
is
a different
some
kind of environment.
high stakes trust building right here.
Right.
Yeah.
It really is high stakes.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, what he starts with 5 leadership rules of engagement. Now here again, think about 3 situations, and I'll talk about the sales situation as I talk through this. But he is looking from an FBI agent talking to some foreign agent, someone who wants to defect, someone who doesn't want to defect, but there's a certain amount of, let's say, behind the scenes information they can share and that kind of thing. So that's the relationship, that's the environment that he's working in. And I've always worked in, here again, a sales situation where you've got a customer and you've got a salesman. The salesman has to find out what the customer really needs and wants before he can introduce any product. So there's got to be some level of trust there and some kind of level of transparency there, because you're exposing your problems to someone. Here are the problems. For example, I come out of the truck sales training environment. So here again, you got to find out what that truck operator is concerned about, what his customers are concerned about, how he's driving his vehicles, what his competitor situation. So you have to build up some trust there. And also in our open organization communities, here again, we're dealing with a lot of people. We unfortunately are not be able to physically get together. We're not, generally, most of us are not in the same organizations. We don't have bosses and subordinates and that kind of thing. We're just a team coming together to solve a problem. And that obviously requires a lot of trust. So he starts out with these 5 leadership rules. rules of engagement. So number one is suspend your ego, and I'll go through these in detail. I'll just read through them right now. Suspend your ego, be non-judgmental, validate others, honor reason, and be generous. So let me go through each one of those one by one. First, suspend your ego. Now take a look at this picture of the guy off to the left. He's got his arms folded. He looks kind of frowned. He kind of has a feeling of ego. Just his body language is someone you don't want to open up to. You don't want to, let's say, tell your problems to. It's almost a guy you're waiting for him to tell you what to do. So this is the biggest problem about ego. You have this tremendous impact that'll shut people down. And now, building a trusting relationship is not a debate. You're not going to break the person down and make him divulge things. It is not like a debate where you're going to win and he's going to lose. It's sharing information, and hopefully as you do that sharing information, you're going to help each other solve each other's problems. So the first thing is, each of us tend to focus on our own life. But when building trust, we must totally focus on the other person's life and his context, his situations, desires, and that thing. And here again, this same topic will be, same point will come up several times throughout this presentation. Also, suspending your ego to focus on what your final objective is. Because if you can, it's really worth it. So if you can think about, I have a relationship, I'm going to meet a person. Now, what do I want to get from that? What is my end goal from that? What do I want to achieve, both for myself and for that other person, and hopefully get agreement from him? The next thing about trust is to get them to trust you, you must earn that trust by focusing on them. So you cannot assume that you can walk in the door, immediately the guy's going to trust you. No matter what your title, no matter how high your rank is, you cannot really assume that he's going to trust you, because we all have feelings, and we're all, let's say, evaluating other people and such, and how well you can do that. So you've got to think about earning trust from him before he should trust you before you are going to be you're going to be able to trust him. Okay, non-judgmental. Now here again, look to my little illustration. This guy is sitting there. He's quiet. All he's doing is listening. He's not, let's say, giving a comment. Hopefully he's not frowning or anything like that. He's just patiently, quietly listening. And what he's trying to do is building an environment, or let's say an impression that I want you to give me information. I want to learn more about your situation, as opposed to, let's say, commenting on every single thing he says. So respect of opinions, attitudes, ideas, and perspective of your contact. Now that's a sales word. Your contact, we could call it the partner, you could call it the colleague, or you could call it part of the community, or whatever it is. But no matter how different that person is, you've got to be able to understand what it is. So no one trusts people who look down on them, and no one trusts people who won't understand them. So hopefully you want to build an environment where he understands that you understand him. Then he will start to trust you more and more. In many cases, your judgment may not be that important. Quite often, we're always asking for opinions and suggestions and such from people. And actually, their opinion, if they're not a specialist in the field, they don't know it, their isolated opinion may not be that important. And in my case, I always like to joke around I think he's crazy, but I'm crazier and I can't evaluate it very well. So my opinion really shouldn't be come in, and my opinion is not that important. What others think of themselves is more important. So just keep asking questions about them and how they feel. So interestingly, and this is his concept, I never really thought about this, but if I can make that other person feel really good about himself, if I can flatter him in areas that he never really thought he was all that good in, if I convince him that he's, let's say, more valuable or more talented than he really is, or than he really thinks he is, then I can build you kind of, let's say, your trust kind of tags along, or it moves along with that degree of, let's say, praising him for what he can do. So that's an interesting point. And validating others. Here, validating others is observe and try to find some kind of common decency. Quite often we evaluate people, let's say, prematurely in a bad way, but we have to dig deep and try to find what kind of basic decency does that person have, and probe of what decency means to that other person, to them, and try to get agreement. So you believe that this is the right thing to do. You believe these principles are correct, right? So you can get a feeling for his level of integrity, and then show him some level of decency yourself. And that, of course, is pretty straightforward. So, but make sure people know you see their perspective. And I like to, let's say, if someone gave me a comment, whether I like it or not, whether I disagree with it, I would like to repeat that comment back to them and confirm that's what he means and that's what he thinks. And so, and what I'm trying to do is, yes, I understand it, but I want to make sure he understands that I understand what he means. And this is an interesting one. It says, manage initial expectations and be open to new ideas. Others might have different priorities, which we should understand. This is interesting. You're going to go in with goals, and you want to achieve something in your encounter with that person, but don't go in with rigid expectations, because what happens is you gather a lot of information before your encounter, before your meeting, and then during the meeting, you're learning more and more things, and so your expectations could be modified. They could be delayed. They could be adjusted. Brian, we're always talking about iterating all the time. We're iterating because we're learning from each other. And that's what I think what Dreeke is saying. Dreeke is saying here, the author is saying here, is don't be too rigid with your expectations, because they may need to be adjusted. And this is basically what I'm saying in this next line. So the best is to avoid having rigid expectations. It takes pressure off you and helps you to resist pressuring them. And pressure leads to discussion, exploration, and collaboration shut down. So this is one of our principles right here. You can shut down all the collaboration simply because of this rigid, let's say, environment you created, and you're putting too much pressure on. Honor reason. This is very straightforward and quite obvious, but don't personalize, emotionalize, debate, or exaggerate. Stick to the facts. Explore rational, shared self-interest. So you have some interest. Obviously, the other person has some interest, some reasons why they're there, and how can you share and and that's what we're trying to explore here, with basic facts and not a lot of emotions. Trust based on pure emotions weakens when feelings change. So you can get in a hot discussion and you're giving comments and giving comments, and then if you can relax and calm down, all of a sudden new ideas come out, different ways. But as soon as your emotions change, then your position will start to change. And I think that's what he's alluding to. And this is right out of my sales seminar. I used to say this, I call it the psychology of selling. Imagine 3 responses. For example, a customer says, the price is too high, or your product is no good, or the competitors are much better than you, or something like that. You can answer that in 3 ways. One is you can defend yourself strongly and say, no, the price is not high, or the competitors are not that good, or something like that. So one is a defensive posture. He pushes at you and you push back. So that's response number 1. Response number 2, maybe even a little bit worse, you agree with him. Yes, the prices are too high. Yes, the competitors are much better. Yes, we're not very, very competitive at all. So that's the second one where you just basically give up. And the third one is here again, this is honoring reason. If he says the price is too high, why are you saying that? Is have you seen competitor prices that are lower than ours? Maybe that product is different than ours, and that's why the price is lower. Maybe our product has more features than that product, and that's why that product is lower. Maybe it may be you're not comparing with products. Maybe you simply don't have enough money to buy it right now, and you should not be buying a new product. Maybe you should be working with a used product. But what I want to do is I want to find out the reasoning behind that in a very non-emotional way and get that person talking to me so I can understand his reasoning and see how I'm breaking down, Brian. I'm breaking down the emotions and moving it toward some real problem solving. What is the problem that is behind the scenes that makes him burst out that the price is too high and it's no good or something like that? Okay, be generous. Be generous, and this is what he mentions. You can provide. What you want to do is every time you have a meeting, you want to honor his time with some kind of offering, whatever. Let me just run through this very quickly. In spite of a strong title or reputation, don't expect automatic trust. That I mentioned this before. So you earn it by your actions. So if you can provide something to that person, and what I like to do in my best case, obviously for the meeting in a sales situation, I like to try to prepare as much as I can about what that person would want, what he would need. And then if I can, my number one thing is give him information. Give him information that is extremely valuable to him, and maybe he didn't really know how valuable it is. And another case in a customer situation, one of the ideal ways you're going to sell to him, who is he going to sell to? If you can help him, you can give him referrals, if you can give him introductions for his business, that is here again, that's an offering. So this offering doesn't have to be a physical, here, I'll give you something, a physical item. It could be in the area of a service. It could be in the area of information and such. Okay, trust is not one-sided. You must show trust too. So trust is a two-way street. So what you're doing is you're sharing, basically. You share something to him, he shares something to you, and you're moving back and forth on this. And this is here. This is the you might say the birth of our collaboration activities, just the sharing of something. And also, it feels good to give something away. So consider what they would value that you could provide, and that would, of course, build the trust that you're looking for. And look for problems people have, which they usually have. If you can dig down and find their problems, usually they hide it. Okay, that would be very hopeful. And then be generous in helping them with that particular problem. And that of course, it builds trust as well. Okay, building trust in a network. Now, imagine a whole network like we're trying to build open organization communities, and we're doing it, how do I say it, virtually. We can't have, be working with the people we grew up in our hometown. A lot of us have moved from several places, so we're working virtually here. So imagine this. Okay, trust helps build trust networks. And of course, this is what we want to do, Brian, with our open organization communities. We want to bring communities together, have the people within that community trust each other in whatever context we're in, whatever project we're particularly in. Okay, in this, for example, he brings up the situation, they are like hubs and spokes, people with directly trusted people around them. So you have a certain amount of people, because we've been working with each other, Brian, for now, 5-6 years now. So we have a trusting relationship built up. And the interesting thing, we have a direct relationship, a direct public let's say trust relationship buildup. What is interesting is the indirect one. Let me just carry on here. So more spokes you have, the better. So the more this network of people you have, the better. And obviously, but most important, and also the more spokes your spokes have, the better. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to say here is these are, I can't remember, we studied it together, Brian, but the term weak ties came up. And these are the people who you don't know them, but you know someone who knows them. Let's say you have a trusted friend, and that friend has a network of trusted friends, and they're calling weak ties. Okay, let me just go through this. So you have your hub, your main guy there. You've got the spokes, and those are the people underneath you, or I should say around you, that you trust. And then what you have is this indirect trust connection. So these are the people you know. I should say the people you know are the people that they know. How can I say this better? The people who know the people, the people
I
you
get you,
know.
though. It's hard to
Yeah.
explain, but I get you. Right, right. The
Okay,
diagram helps.
they're the your friends. Who do they know? In sales, they would call this a referral source. They're indirectly, but here again, you're building a network here of people around you that can have a referral source for whatever you do. Now, interestingly, the LinkedIn. LinkedIn is basic concept. Obviously, LinkedIn is basically for people looking for a job, but they have tiers of connections, not necessarily trust, but simply connecting with people. And most important is this indirect connection. It's that second tier connection. And of course, you want to make the second tier connection a first tier connection and get to know them personally. But the second tier connection could be into hundreds and hundreds of people. It could be even thousands of people. If I know, for example, every article that I write, Brian, I send out personally, not counting LinkedIn and Facebook and those social media. Personally, I send out email about, I think it's around 140 I sent out. Generally, I send out, I just wrote an article, have a look at it. It's something that I found very interesting. I hope you'll find interesting too, something like that. And I will send it out to about 140 or so people right now. That's the database that I have right now. So in a sense, that's my network or my customer base or whatever you want to. Now, those people, they may be referring it on to other people too. And that is here again, that's that weak link we're talking about here. Okay, now this is the second part. In my two-part article, this was in the second part. Dreeke brings up this 4 steps to inspire trust. And this is really down to earth, meeting a person, creating an environment, and going through the process of having, let's say, a collaboration with someone. The first, of course, is align your goals. So you want to match your goals with his goals, and hopefully you're going to meet some middle ground where you can both, let's say, achieve something. The next is apply the power of the context. Context, you want to understand his situation. His situation, obviously not your situation. So you want to understand that situation. The next is, he calls it crafting the encounter. And here again, this is a FBI spy type of thing where you're creating the environment where you can get the information you want, and it'll be in the appropriate, let's say, environment. And then connect with him. And that here again, I'll explain that. Those are the terms that he used throughout the book. First, aligning. Here again, you want to align your goals with him. So determine your primary goals from initially. This is what you want to achieve, and what sacrifices or efforts you want to, let's say, you're willing to make, or are let's say, are to be made to achieve them. So what sacrifices and what efforts do you want to put in to achieve your goals? And next, then you want to learn what the other member or the other person, or here again, the other contact, what his goals are. And then having those two, you can look at ways where you can align your goals with the others. Next is context. Now, I made a little illustration here. This guy looks like he's sad, looks like he's worried. He could be just rubbing his eyes, who knows? But anyway, we want to understand his particular situation. So get to know the other person's concerns, desires, beliefs, personality, maybe personality trait. Right on LinkedIn, I would say my Myers-Briggs type indicator. So people would get a feeling for, he's that type of guy. I would do things like that. So I would give them as much information as possible. And then here again, we could exchange information easier and of course, build up trust. So this will, understanding all these, the person's situation will determine their positions on a particular issue. And people only trust those who know them. So if you get to know them and they can feel it, they're going to trust you more. So that's why you should be studying them. And then once you study them, it'll be much easier to match your goals with them. Develop a plan to achieve their goals along with yours. Pretty straightforward. And if you push your goals on them too hard, they will become defensive and information exchange will shut down. And there'll be no good ideas. No good ideas will materialize. So I wrote in here just recently, this is really killing collaboration and transparency. So you push too hard, and of course they're going to push back or they're going to reject you, and that's where collaboration starts to break down, or the ability to be more transparent starts to break down. Now, crafting the environment. This is here again. This is the environment of the FBI agent, and we've all seen movies. I'm sure, Brian, you've seen it, where you've got an agent's got to meet his counterpart spy
or whatever.
They always meet in the park, and somebody's holding a newspaper. So I'm sitting a picture of the park right there. So you're creating this environment so you can exchange a certain amount of information. And this is the first place. So plan the first meeting very meticulously. And I guess this is more in the counterintelligence and intelligence arena more. I generally, in a sales situation, there's usually two cases you want to meet. Are you going to be meeting in his office, or are you going to be meeting in your office? Now, when you're in truck sales, quite often at the early stages, you want to meet where he is operating his truck, so you can figure out the operating environment for his truck, and then you can recommend what he needs, what he doesn't need, and that kind of thing. And it could be not just selling a truck, it could be helping him with service, helping him with deliveries, all kinds of different things you can do for that customer if you're in his environment. And also, if you're in his environment, he generally is more relaxed than if he was in your office, particularly with other customers around. Sometimes his competitor is in the same office, so it would be a little bit more threatening if he was in your office. For automobile sales, quite often they do a lot of selling right in a showroom and such. But here again, you have to think about that environment. And here's his recommendation. So know and create the proper atmosphere and moods required, the special nature of the occasion. So what is the occasion? The best timing and location. Usually our meetings are always, because I'm in Tokyo, Brian, our meetings are always in my evening, and it's always in your morning and such. Huh? I don't know if did that turn out to be the best time for our meeting?
I guess it did. I mean, we just kind of hit on this, and it seemed to be, the best time, and location's easy. We just both in our studies, but just how our time zones synced up.
Yeah, so we always had here again, we always have 5 or 6 people that are always able to make it at that time. So that tend to be the time. And then location, of course, for us, location is anywhere where there's no noise in my background, there's no noise in your background, and such. So you have to, let's say, make sure that the dog is not barking and the neighbors are not coming around and that kind of thing. So you do, to some small degree, you've got to create an environment there in a location. And here's an interesting comment. He says, your opening remark, plan that in advance, what your opening remarks are. That's kind of interesting. I never really thought about that. But what is your opening remarks? And that is that first impression you want to make. Think beforehand what to offer and what to ask for. So basically, what do you want to, this is what I want from this meeting, and this is what I want to offer him. So this is what I want to offer him in the meeting, and this is what I want to get in that first meeting. And don't expect too much from the initial meeting. Plan for others. And this is what I call, now this is not him, this is not from the book, this is me. I call this the hit and run case. And the best common case, for example, let's say I'm working with a customer. I found out what he needs. I found out what his problems are. I know exactly what product he is. I've demonstrated the product. I've showed the product. And he asked me what pricing it is. And I said, okay, I've got to go back to the office. I bring him the pricing. But if I know the guy is very concerned about pricing, I will give him the price, but I will say, just think about it for a little bit. Maybe I put in some options there you don't want. Maybe I've given you let's say a product that is too large for your particular issue. Just think about it, and I'll be back tomorrow. And I get out as soon as I can, because I know he wants to think about it. Instead of saying, what do you think of the price? What do you think? And have him be forced to say yes or no. I want him to think about it and then come back with any kind of concerns you have for the next time. So that's what I say. I hit him with it, and I don't let him, let's say, answer. I leave, and that will move into the next encounter. And usually your second contact is quite a lot different than your first contact. Your first contact is so much learning is going on that it's hard to, let's say, make decisions when you're in a learning mode. But when you come, you've, let's say, sat on the information for a certain period of time, then maybe you can come back with, let's say, a very, very different environment the next time through. So there are times for planning and times for performing. The meetings are performance. So what you want to do is you want to role play, practice, anticipate what's going to happen as much as possible, be prepared as much as possible, and you go through all of the planning process as much as possible. And then the meeting itself is just a performance. So if you're not well prepared, the fear and emotions of the moment could be overwhelming. For example, if you want to make a sale and you're just dying to make that sale, there's will be so much pressure on you. The emotions will build up so much. Some of those emotions will be transferred over to that other person. And of course, that will be counterproductive. So to reduce emotions, planning and preparing and role playing can be very, very helpful. For me, when I was doing sales training, the most important thing for me was making sure the salespeople could give a product presentation. So that I role played heavily. I gave my presentation, and then I had in the class, or I should say in the seminar, I would have 6 people give the presentations of the product we're giving, and I would have signs on the product so they can easily see what the features are. But I want them to practice using that and let's say practicing that. And then when they're in front of a real customer, then it'll come out very, very natural. And that's what they do in the military. That's why they have all the drills in the military. That's why NASA does all its training. I think they do most of their training in Houston, the Johnson Space Center. That's where all the training and review and role playing takes place. Because when you go into outer space, obviously you make one small mistake and it could be very deadly. Okay, here's something out of my seminar too. Imagine this here again, that you're creating the environment. These 2 people are face to face. One person gives a comment in one direction, and that is the direction the pressure is going. For example, let's say they're negotiating a price on a particular product. You give a comment, you ask for it, and you expect a response. So you can see the pressure going in one direction here. Sometimes you can move the table around to a 90-degree angle, put your documents on one side, and you and your, let's say, the person you're working with are acting like a team, and they're both looking at the documents. What do you want on the documents? What do you want to remove on the documents? In the documents, are there anything that is concerning to you you don't want in there? Is there anything we have to add in there that I'm forgetting or something like that? So in a sense, the pressure is going toward the document. They're not between the two individuals. So that was one thing. That was, here again, creating the environment that I would use in sales training. Okay, this is connect. This is the last part of his seminar. So show you understand the person and demonstrate you follow their reasoning. Here again, this is quite a bit of a review of what I've said before. Present back what they want to hear, namely their positions and their needs. So if I understand the person correctly, I will respond back. If I understand you, this is what you want, this is what you need, these are your concerns. Is that right? And this is interesting. The speed of trust is the opposite of the speed of speech. People who speak slowly build trust faster than people who speak fast. Okay, in my environment that I was in, here again, Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Latin America, most of the time I'm speaking to people who are not English speakers as their first language. Quite often it's the second language. So my language has slowed down over the years, particularly when I'm in front of a large group and I'm looking at the group and trying to get a feeling. Are they understanding me? Are they not understanding me? So naturally, my speech has slowed down, and hopefully I'm communicating better simply because my speech has slowed down. And that was a comment right out of his book, and I never really thought about it that way. Try to get people to like themselves by being more respectful of them. This will lead to them trusting you. And this is what I alluded to earlier. And that was a very interesting point. And praise them for qualities about themselves that they hadn't thought about. So if you can praise them on something that they thought it was common sense or something like that. So they're downgrading some talent that they really have, but really not everyone has that talent. So basically this, Brian, this is the entire presentation. I'd like to kind of end here by saying the above are the key points from Drake's book. And what we've got to do in the open organization community, our challenge is to apply them within open organizations on a global scale using information technology. So we're talking, basically right now, we're talking computer to computer. And so how can I do that?
That's right.
Build trust in the environment we're working in. And that is the presentation.
Yeah, I can imagine there's sort of a face-to-face bias in some of this work because of the context out of which Dreeke is writing, right? Like FBI agent informant relationship is often, as you said, very sort of co-present, right? And how do you take these things and adapt them to new technological contexts where you might not have the same advantages or some of the disadvantages that you would experience, face to face?
Yeah, quite often people ask me, they'll say, "Oh, now that you're virtual, really, I don't like virtual. I want to get face to face. I cannot do work virtually. I want to get face to face." And I don't think that is a either or type of thing.
I
There
agree.
are times when it would be good to be together. And there are times that maybe we can achieve a lot of the things virtually. How much can we do in advance virtually before our direct meeting?
Right.
Yeah. A lot of the things that I did, I always noticed that I could communicate far better if I've gone to their location just one time. And I noticed with my last job, this is not the training job, but the sales job, Once I find a distributor for a country, I visit him in his office. Maybe if I'm really lucky, he shares a half a day with him, and he takes me around his customers within his country, and I can get a feeling for where the product is used, how the delivery is, what concerns they have, and I have a feeling for their environment just one single time. And after that one single time, honestly, after that, it's just human relations. I really, business-wise, I don't have to visit him again. I'm thinking of Spain here. I'm thinking of Germany here. I'm thinking of several places within the United States where I would be going around with my customer, who is a salesman selling to his customer, and I would be going around with them. If I can do that one single time, then honestly, our relationship, the trust is really built up, and I don't have to visit him. I did, because there were conferences. When I went to Nashville, that was a conference, and I was going to introduce my predecessor, but I didn't have to meet all those people because I knew them and they knew me. But anyway, if you can have that one time, maybe that might be the secret. But we've got to work in a virtual world, and I think that's going to be the world of the future, huh, Brian?
Sure seems like it. Yep, sure seems like it. Well, Ron, fascinating and useful as always. Thank you very much for your time and for walking us through your research and this great review of the Code of Trust. If you're watching at home and you want to read up on this material, Ron's got the links here in the slides, and I'll make sure that the links to Ron's writing, the written components of the book review, are available in the show notes for this episode. Until next time, everyone, we'll see you again on Ron's Reviews. And Ron, thanks again.
Thanks. Hope you liked it.